All right. Well, still, they claim that it was inspired, and I know what a lot of people, again, are thinking today. As they listen to us talk about this, you can claim anything you want, but surely over the years, as we've become wiser in history and wiser through archaeology, we've discovered that the archaeologist Spade disproves the words of the Bible.
Sean, I really think that the opposite is true, that the Spade of the archaeologist confirms the authenticity of the Bible. Let me give you a variety of examples. Take the Moabite stone, for example. The Moabite stone was discovered in Jordan in 1868. And over the last 100-odd years, 140 years, we've had a chance to confirm the authenticity of the Moabite stone. It records in the rock records the Moabite attacks on Israel. Now, you can read about those attacks in the Old Testament, but here you have a stone record. Or take, for example, the Lachish letters. The Lachish letters were discovered in southern Israel, north of Beersheba, about 24 miles, from 1932 to 1938. The Lachish letters record Nebuchadnezzar's attack on Jerusalem in 586 BC. And so you can read it in the Bible, you read it in the rock records. I remember when I was living in England, I often went to the British Museum and looked at the archaeological discoveries there. And there are two of particular note. One is the Rosetta Stone.
The Rosetta Stone, sure. We all learned about that in school.
About 3.5 feet high, about 1.5 foot long, this black basalt stone. And when Napoleon invaded Egypt in 1798, he took with him probably 2,000 to 3,000 artisans and scholars. And they went down and they were digging in a place called Rosetta and came across this Rosetta Stone. Now, the Rosetta Stone was significant because it had 3 languages on it. The top were hieroglyphics. The center was Demotic, which is really a cursive Egyptian language, and the bottom was Greek. And so as they saw this, they looked at the hieroglyphics, and nobody could understand, of course, at that time, 1798, the picture language of the Egyptians. And so these monuments were looking down on humanity. They were towering over all humanity, and nobody could understand the meaning of them. But the interesting thing is, they began to look at the Rosetta Stone, and they saw the hieroglyphics. And they noticed that in the hieroglyphics there was a little circle around some words. It was called a cartouche. Right. And they guessed. They said that circle must circle kings' names. They began to compare it with the Demotic cursive Egyptian and the Greek. And they worked backward from the Greek. And there was a brilliant French man by the name of Jean-Paul Champollion.
Right.
And he was able to figure out a translation of the hieroglyphics from the Rosetta Stone. Once that happened, those picture monuments began speaking to us. Now, let me tell you one example of how they confirm the authenticity of the Bible.
Great.
There's a group of people called the Hittites. They're mentioned in the Bible 47 times. Now, up until we unlocked the meaning of the hieroglyphics, the scholars said the Hittites never existed.
Now, I've actually read some older books that say those stupid Christians believe in Hittites. There never was any such thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the Hittites are mentioned in the Bible as having major attacks on the Egyptians and being a major nation. The scholars said for years, they never existed, the Christians are ignorant to believing in them. But all the while, the hieroglyphics were speaking to us of battles between the Egyptians and the Hittites. And once we unlocked the hieroglyphics through the Rosetta Stone, today there's not a modern scholar in the world that disbelieves the Hittites. So the Bible, rather than being disproved by archaeology, is indeed proved by archaeology.
And didn't they actually find some Hittite ruins up in Turkey? I think
they
actually
did.
discovered the civilization.
Numerous Hittite cities, and I have great graphics of those, and we use them in our lectures on archaeology all the time. The major cities that had thousands of people living in. The other thing that to me is significant that is in the British Museum is the Cyrus cylinder. The Cyrus cylinder is a barrel cylinder shown. It's about this long and it's round, and the ancients would often write on those cylinders. Now in the Bible, in Isaiah chapter 44, there is a remarkable prophecy. It's made 150 years before Cyrus was even born.
That was Isaiah 44?
Yes, Isaiah 44.
Okay.
And Israel was in captivity to the Babylonians. And the Bible predicted that a man by the name of Cyrus, Isaiah 44, verse 28, who says of Cyrus, "He is my shepherd, he shall perform all my pleasure," even saying to Jerusalem, "You will be built." Now, verse 27 says that Cyrus would dry up the rivers. Now, this prophecy is made 150 years before Cyrus is born. It's made by Isaiah.
Humanly, that's impossible.
It is. See, this prophecy is made 680 to 700 BC. That's before Christ. And Cyrus, actually, the Persian king, attacked the Babylonian Empire in 539 BC. So here's a prophecy made well in advance. Cyrus, the Persian king, came down, went to attack Babylon, recognized that he couldn't do it. The Babylonians had a 20-year food supply in the city. The river Euphrates ran through the center of the city, supplying it with a constant water supply. 2 chariots could race side by side on the top of the walls of Babylon. You just could not attack it. Cyrus, brilliantly, in a major architectural engineering feat, diverted the Euphrates River into large reservoirs. On the night of a drunken feast in Babylon, he marched his soldiers down through the riverbed, and they came up inside the city, attacked it, and overthrew it. Now, here's the remarkable thing. The Cyrus cylinder in the British Museum describes Cyrus's attack. It says that he dried up the river. It says that he was the leader. And remarkably enough, he says that he let the captives of Israel go free to rebuild their temple. Exactly like predicted in the Bible, confirmed in the rock records.
So the general pattern of non-biblical historians has been to corroborate what the Bible actually says.
Exactly. I mean, that is through in the Dead Sea Scrolls. You look at the Dead Sea Scroll in the Shrine of the Book in Israel, the Dead Sea Scroll of Isaiah. It's, 54 feet long. And Sir Frederick Kenyon, one of the leading archaeologists in the world and Bible students, says that the Christian can take the Bible in his hand and know it's the Word of God as corroborated by the Dead Sea Scrolls. You take the Ebla tablets.
Yeah, now those are interesting.
They really are, because I think the significance of the Ebla tablets is there's 2 or 3 significances of them. One, it's one of the largest extensive libraries in rock records we've found, just thousands and thousands of volumes. But the Ebla tablets mention the creation story, very similar to the Bible creation story. A flood story, very similar to the flood story. The Ebla tablets talk about Abraham, they talk about Isaac, and they talk about, here's the bombshell, 2 sin cities, Sodom and Gomorrah.
You're kidding.
They do,
Wow.
in the Ebla tablets. So it's quite amazing. And in my mind, the archaeology confirms the authenticity of the Bible. But it's only the Spirit of God speaking to your heart as you study the Word that proves to you its authenticity.
Now, I know that somebody that's watching today is going to say, well, all right, the history checks out, but still there are contradictions and mistakes in the Bible all over the place. Now, often when they say that, I've asked them, well, where are they? And they don't know. Mm-hmm. But I remember as a boy, I was reading through the Gospels, and I noticed that Matthew gave a genealogy of Jesus, and Luke gave a genealogy of Jesus, but they were different. And I thought, my word, is that a mistake? Why do there seem to be contradictions in the Bible?
There are apparent contradictions, and notice I'm careful in the choice of my word. I say apparent contradictions. I had that same question, Sean, and I went to my theology professor when I was a college student, and his name was Mel Clemens, and I said, Pastor Clemens, why is it that there are contradictions in the Bible? And he was a very wise man, and he hesitated a moment, and he said, Mark, you know what I do with the contradictions in the Bible? And I said, no. He said, I have a little jar in my mind, and he said, every time I come across a apparent contradiction, I just put it on a little scroll, a mental scroll, and I put it in the jar in my mind. And he said, you know what happens? I'm studying the Bible 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, and I take the cap off that jar, and I take out that one, and I cross it off, and I say, well, now I understand, because it's just an apparent contradiction. Sean, I'd rather know all that I know and not know all I don't know than know all I don't know and not know what I know.
Now, you've got to say that one more time for me.
Okay. I would rather know all that I know about God and His Word and not know all the things I don't know than cast out all my certainty of what I do know and base it on the uncertainty that I don't know.